Hey everybody, this is Orange Pie. I'm going to try this Iron Branch Invitational just to show you how I play it. I like how it has Kaho+Owlwood, so it's one of the more challenging tournaments. This is my bag. I guess let me know if you have questions in the comments, but I rock 2 muskets and I've got a roll disc. I like this Pioneer Fade Accurate. This hole I just lay up since the nerf to the light disc. I have trouble getting it up on the shelf, and so I go for this little uphill shot. Basically just try and throw it in with the fuse, and I just get it over the rim for the eagle. This hole I just play the forehand. It's pretty standard. Most people play this forehand because it fades away from the river, and no matter where it hits down here, it's usually safe. My musket is a pretty good approach. I use the windbreak one here. A lot of times I basically alternate, or depending on the shot, I'll use either the windbreak accurate musket or the accurate extra glide musket. This hole I just do a powered down windbreak musket. You could use a river or an explorer, but I don't need one because the musket can do the job, so I don't actually carry a 7-speed. I prefer some of the fun discs like the Roller and the Fade Pioneer. You'll see why in a little bit. This is not a live voiceover. This is me watching back the footage. So, this hole, you saw that was a windbreak extra glide. Now this hole, one of the hardest holes in the game, I actually use 3 different discs on this. For this wind, I like the light glide ballista over the top because the wind pushes it left of that tree right there, and then it fades towards the basket. In other winds, I'll use either the Fade Pioneer or the windbreak accurate musket. Usually with the left to right winds, that's what I'll do. This hole, pretty straightforward. I like the extra glide windbreak. I like to use a windbreak ballista on this hole just to make it, I think it's a little bit more accurate. And the improved ground play, ground action, the disc really slides, so I used to use a skip disc on this, I don't anymore. The ground play works just fine. Okay, so this hole I use a Fade Pioneer. This is a tough wind on this hole, so I'm aiming way out to the left. And you can see in a second why I use the Fade Pioneer. So basically, it turns to a right angle, so there's no chance of it going into the water. And you could fade a musket out there, put a ton of hyzer on it. I don't have to put any hyzer. I just straight pull back. Don't even have to think about it. It's safe every time with the accurate Fade Pioneer. You do have to adjust your aim depending on the wind, but it's just a easy, safe play with that disc. This one, I try to get as big of a drive as possible. You want to make sure it's turned to the right enough, because if it fades out too early, it will go OB to the left. I get a nice big skip here, so that's pretty much a perfect drive. 319. This is the hard part, is choosing the right disc. I'm using my accurate extra glide musket, so you can see the extra glide right there just gets me over the barrier. If I had gone with the windbreak musket, it wouldn't have got there. So I don't know too many people that bag 2 muskets, but I put them to use. They're probably my most used discs. This hole, there's tons of different lines through the woods. I'm trying to think. I actually haven't practiced my roller through the woods on this hole, but I've gotten it to work before, but I'm not confident with it, and it's risky no matter how you... This play, to me, is a pretty guaranteed... Well, not a guaranteed eagle. I'm pretty out of position here. I'm trying to decide what to do. I should just fast forward this a little bit, but I don't know. I'm debating trying to do a roller here. I'm like, but then I end up just going with my big skip ballista. However, this is actually pretty far downhill. You don't have to use a ballista here. Recoil would be a good option. I think even I should have used a non-big skip here, because it skips too far, but 93 feet, I should be able to knock this down to get an eagle still. And what's funny about the ratings on this hole right now, they're a little bit unfair. The computer's always, or the AI is always eagle or sometimes albatross that hole. And I think that's because right now a lot of players are restarting if they don't get the albatross on that hole. In Challenge the Valley, I'm guessing all the data is showing that everyone is eagling and albatrossing that hole, but really they're just restarting a bunch of times and skewing the data on that hole. This hole, to me, is not worth going for an eagle, so I just use the musket to safely get in the fairway. The muskets have the accurate modifier, so I try to use those as much as possible. This one, I like the windbreak accurate musket. The extra glide, I think, goes a little too far. So this is another hole that I like to have. I'm glad that I have two muskets on. Okay, Kaho 4 again. Again, this is one of the hardest holes in the game, but this is a favorable wind for the drive, but then it's a headwind for the approach. But I try to, again, use my farthest distance ballista, which is the extra glide big skip, which I'm pretty sure now it goes further than the light big skip ballista in this recent update. So here I'm closer than I was last time, but I have a headwind, so I'm still going with the extra glide musket. And that's something that you're just going to have to figure out the distances. You always want to disc up a little bit because this is such an uphill approach. And then here I'm going with the extra glide musket. It's pretty much the perfect distance for this hole. And again, that's why I like to have both muskets in my bag. But if you have a 7-speed, then I would, recommend getting the extra glide musket in your bag. Of course, you want the accurate modifier. This one, the fuse usually turns a little bit more. It just didn't on me there, so I didn't get the ace. And you'll notice that I'm using this heavy, sticky putter because if you're using the putting feature, then there's no accurate or inaccurate. It's just what your finger does. So to me, I think no one else is using this, but I am using this heavy sticky because I'm hoping that it will prevent spit outs. Okay, I got a little bit lucky through the trees. I like to use the windbreak extra glide ballista to try and thread the needle on this hole. And here I'm going for the putt. That time I used the fuse because it goes a little further than the pure. I could have used the pure though. The pure goes pretty far with the putting feature. Here I like the windbreak musket. I think it's the perfect distance for the second shelf on the left on the cliff hopper. This was a huge skip forward. I don't usually throw it here, so I'm not quite sure the distance. And I throw it to what I think is like a 20-foot incline, but it's a little bit further. And I just come up short, but it was a good try. But a little frustrating to come up short. This hole, I really like to use a turnover. So I don't use a forehand. The fuse is really understable, so I actually just do a turnover backhand. Now this is a tough wind on this hole, so I take a little bit to line this one up. But I like the forehand play. There's no trees in the way with the forehand play, and I like the windbreak musket on this hole. Again, my two probably most used discs are the windbreak musket and the extra glide musket, and I like to use them because the accurate modifier is probably the most powerful modifier in the game. Always try to use an accurate disc where possible. This is a tough one. I used the accurate extra glide musket, and I actually didn't put enough anhyzer, and I just barely sneaked through on the left side, but that was a little bit lucky looking back at this now. Luckily, it didn't fade out too much. Sometimes the muskets can really fade out pretty hard. You can see the AI's scores. There's all bogeys and pars because that's considered one of the hardest holes in the game right now, according to the data. This had a huge tailwind right to left, which pushes the forehands further. And this is just a crazy long drive. I've never thrown it 690 with a forehand on this hole before. Huge headwind. With headwinds, I misjudged this. Headwinds do make the disc slightly understable, and you can see how understable it became right there. So that was not a good approach. I actually should have disked up also to my windbreak ballista. This is just a tough wind to read as well, and it was slightly uphill, so I end up hitting the cage, and you can see again there's just eagles and albatrosses with the AIs, which is just crazy. This is again the tough wind on this hole, so I'm using the Pioneer, aiming way out left, but it breaks at a 90-degree angle, so there's really no danger. Just safely get it into the green. This is major strokes on the field right now because not many people have figured this hole out. But the accurate fade Pioneer is my favorite disc right now. This hole, I usually go fuse backhand. I'm testing out the forehand. Not a good idea. It's too understable. I'm going to go back to the backhand, I think, on this hole. But luckily, I get a good kick off the tree. Any Owlwood hole can really get you, but this one should be the easiest. This hole again, sometimes this windbreak glide ballista is really understable. Did not get the turn I wanted, so I'm forced to, but I kind of, bounce off the wall and get a good enough shot. So end up making that 76 feet. It's not too bad. So here's another hole. I love the accurate extra fade Pioneer. This just, I actually power down and don't do full power because it will go long. But a power down Pioneer. I'm checking the wind here, but it'll just fade. There's a backdoor local route in this hole. I've never even experimented with it because I don't like to go through the trees and possibly hit a tree. I just like the straightforward play with a very overstable disc. And the expanded bag lets me bag this disc, so why make it difficult? This hole is nicknamed the parachute because your 5-speed will just kind of glide down to the basket, just like a little parachute there. If you're not using a 5-speed, I almost said parachute disc. If you're not using a 5-speed, then you're probably trying to ace run it, or you're powering down or something, but most people just lay up and use the 5-speed. There's a tough wind on this hole, so I want to make sure I hit the disc into the rocks there to kind of slow it down. And again, I use the powered down musket. I don't know if the extra glide, I do have an anchor. I only use that on one hole, which is Lakeside hole 6. But anyways, this wind, I'll either use the Accurate Extra Glide musket for this hole, but because I had a 3 headwind, I went with a 4-hand windbreak extra glide, and there you have it. Pretty easy win. You get a ton of coins now for this win. Yeah, A tiers are fun now because the AIs are very competitive. But hope you enjoyed. See y'all.